Israel's Navy has intercepted the Global Sumud Flotilla, 41 ships carrying more than 400 people, including doctors, lawyers, politicians, and activists like Greta Thunberg. Their mission was to deliver humanitarian aid to Gaza and to challenge Israel's blockade. Stopped in international waters, the flotilla has sparked protests across the world and raised a pertinent question: under international law, does Israel have the right to stop them? To understand the stakes, we start with the scale and purpose of this mission.
The Global Sumud Flotilla is a fleet of civilian vessels which is currently sailing towards Gaza. It is the largest convoy in history to traverse the Mediterranean Sea, and it has the mission to establish a humanitarian corridor to reach the starving people of the Gaza Strip. There are currently over hundreds of people on board from about 40 different countries, and they are united by their shared conviction that something must be done to halt the destruction of Gaza. This particularly since we have recently had a Commission of Inquiry report which said that the Commission believed that genocide was being committed in Gaza. There's something that the Commission has not said in up to 2 years up until this report, where they finally considered whether genocide was being committed, and in their opinion, it is being committed.
Israel, however, has branded the flotilla a threat, framing passengers as extremists. But international law sees them very differently.
Now, very typically, the response from Israel has been that Itamar Ben-Gvir, the Minister of National Security, called the activists on board terrorists and said that they should be treated as such. The Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs called the flotilla a jihadist initiative. Now, under international law, the people on the flotilla who are engaged in delivering humanitarian aid would be presumed to be civilians, as they are volunteers engaged in humanitarian efforts, and they are protected under the laws of war, especially the principle of distinction, which says that you cannot intentionally target civilians, and also the principle of proportionality, and that Israel must take effective precautions.
In other words, branding unarmed volunteers as terrorists collides head-on with humanitarian law. But beyond how the activists are labeled, there is a bigger legal issue: Israel's responsibility as an occupying power.
Provisional measures had also been issued by the International Court of Justice as far back as January 2024, instructing Israel to allow in humanitarian aid into Gaza. As the occupying power, Israel has to ensure food and medical supplies for the occupied population to the fullest extent of the means available, or it has to agree to facilitate impartial humanitarian relief schemes delivered rapidly and without hindrance.
In fact, top UN officials have gone further, urging Israel to lift the blockade altogether.
So the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, called on Israel to urgently lift the blockade of Gaza and allow the entry of life-saving material through all means possible. And it is in an effort to fulfill these obligations that the flotilla is engaging in trying to distribute humanitarian aid to the people of Gaza, particularly since the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation has been found to not be delivering aid in an impartial way, and also there is definitely not enough aid going in there.
The legality of Israel's action also rests on the rules of the sea. Civilian ships in international waters are entitled to safe passage unless they are engaged in piracy, trafficking, or armed attack. Aid convoys don't meet those exceptions.
There are certain protections which are offered under the law of the sea. So the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea, the flotilla would enjoy the freedom of navigation and innocent passage in territorial waters so long as the flotilla does not threaten peace or security. So any naval warships from Italy or Spain which are there to protect the flotilla must only do that. It must only support the flotilla, and they cannot forcibly encroach upon Israeli territory in a way which could amount to a use of force or an armed attack.
This means forcibly seizing the flotilla in international waters raises serious questions about the lawfulness of Israel's blockade enforcement. And this isn't the first time the world has faced these questions.
It's also worth remembering that a flotilla incident did occur in 2010 with the Mavi Marmara, when Israeli soldiers boarded a flotilla of 6 ships which were carrying aid to Gaza, and the IDF raid led to the death of 9 people on board. It was condemned internationally. Unfortunately, in that case, the International Criminal Court's prosecutor decided not to proceed with an investigation as the gravity of the offense was not enough. Quite rightly, it was not enough to warrant ICC intrusion.
With the Global Sumud, the stakes are arguably even higher, as governments with nationals on board are already threatening consequences.
We have yet to see how Israel reacts this time to the flotilla, but the statement of 16 governments with their nationals on board the ships has stated that any violation of international law and human rights of the participants in the flotilla, including attacks against the vessels in international waters or illegal detention, will lead to accountability.
So what does it all add up to? For Israel, the interception is part of enforcing its blockade. For activists, it's about breaking Gaza's isolation. But at the sea, the clash is now over something much bigger: the rules of war, of the sea, and of humanitarian relief, and whether the law will protect civilians bringing aid or allow occupying states such as Israel to block them may shape not just this conflict, but the future of international law itself.